Hi there and welcome to another video from the History Tutor. And today we're looking at the AQA topic of 1918 to 1939 conflict and tension. And we look at the Abyssinian Crisis. So the Abyssinian Crisis can be a bit of a tricky event. It's probably that last event in the League of Nations, and as it starts to decline as we go into the 1930s, the impact of the Great Depression and the work of the dictators to undermine the League, and it starts to disappear. So we're going to look at a source question today, particularly the 12 marker. It can be very tricky. You've got to talk about two sources. You don't have a lot of time. So how are you going to get into those top band of marks? So join me for lesson 10. We'll talk about that. But firstly, you might want to revise your knowledge of the Abyssinian Crisis. Good source work needs really great factual knowledge. So have a look at my revision video and then come back over here to this video and test how well it's gone with a quick quiz. Okay, well, here is our quiz. We've got 12 questions here about the factual knowledge of the Abyssinian Crisis, the causes, some of the events, and some of maybe the sort of solutions and impacts. So have a look through, see what you can answer, maybe pause and have a think about them and come back on in a sec and we'll go through the answers. So let's go through the answers then. So where did an argument occur between Ethiopian and Italian soldiers in December 1934? At the Wawa Oasis, not to be confused, of course, with the Mukden incident, because that would be the Manchurian crisis, of course. Why did Britain and France want to keep good relations? Well, they wanted to keep Italy in the Stresa Pact. This is a quite important little side event we need to be aware of here, and it will help you if you're doing like writing account questions on this. So the Stresa Pact was Britain, France, Italy in an agreement to try and stop German rearmament, because Hitler was in power by this time, and he's trying to rearm Germany against the Treaty of Versailles. And so obviously Mussolini interpreted the Stresa Pact as a bit of a, I can do what I like, and the British and French will support me. Name the British Foreign Minister who spoke out against the Abyssinian Crisis, eventually, Samuel Hoare. What did the League agree about Wawa Oasis? No one was to blame, but Italian pride had obviously been hurt. They were obviously had a nationalist leader, and they believed that they needed some sort of compensation. So when did Italy invade Abyssinia? So October 1935, and this led to sanctions from the League, question 6. So they could not buy any weapons. They're banned from buying tin, rubber, and metals. There was a ban on Italian imports as well. So which important thing did the League not ban Italy from having? Oil, which was a bit of a crucial one. Needed petrol and oil for your tanks and your planes. Possibly could have been a bit of a game changer, that one. But they feared America would sell the oils because America was not in the League, so they feared there was going to be a disaster there. What could the British have closed to stop supply to Italian armies? The Suez Canal, of course, they could have closed. Why didn't they do that? Well, they feared that they couldn't patrol the Mediterranean effectively and stop the Italian Navy. They didn't want to be in an Italian naval incident. Italian Navy had a big enough navy to protect the Mediterranean, and the British didn't want to send in an enormous fleet into that time. You know, it's the time of the Great Depression, time where they haven't invested in military so much. There's not so much military confidence this time. How did the Abyssinian, how much did Abyssinian? So let's now look at some source skills. Now, this is a tricky one. It's a 12 marker, and a lot of marks can be lost quite easily in the paper by not being very successful with your source skills. So let's have a little reminder of what makes good source skills. So here's the question. We're going to think about it in more detail now. So just a reminder of the things you need to do. Okay, so this question says, how useful are sources B and C to the historian studying the impact of the Abyssinian crisis on the League of Nations? So it is also sort of like that writing account question where you might say, write an account of how the Abyssinian crisis weakened the League. So we need to know the events, we need to know the consequences to help us with our source work here. So we need to obviously be able to discuss the provenance of the source, who wrote it, when they wrote it, the information you find underneath the source or next to the source on the exam paper. You need to be able to explain how useful source is with your knowledge. There it is, the first two words, how useful. So that means, yes, there might be some useful information, there might be some not useful information. Now, AQA does not expect you to do a yes and no side argument. You can do 2 yeses, do 2 nos in terms of usefulness. You can do a bit of useful, a bit of not useful. It's up to you. So you must discuss the content of the source as well, suggest the messages of the source. You can quote things from it, of course, or you can just suggest the message, as I say there for the second part, the next bit there. You must explain how useful the source is with your knowledge. So if you're saying it's very useful about the Abyssinian Crisis impact on the League, you must then have some knowledge about that. And then at the end, of course, you need to give an explained judgment. Okay, you need to be able to say just how useful you thought the source was. Okay, so there's a lot to do. So let's start having a think about the first source. We're going to work through source B in detail in this little session now. And then I'll leave source C for you to think about yourself. Okay, so here is our source. So what is the message of the cartoon? How is it useful and not useful to answer the question? And then think about the provenance at the bottom. If you like, have a pause. Imagine you're on an exam paper. Think about what you label and what message you draw from this source. Okay, had a little think here. What about some of these ideas then? Did you pick out that Mussolini is saying the League will not stop in Abyssinia? So he's saying the League is contemptible. The League can do nothing. Okay, so he's obviously learnt that from, Manchuria. Also, there's another bit there where on the right, this points out that the League, that Italy are part of the League as they are a permanent member of the council when she's saying, but aren't you the League when she's saying that? And then what about the lady? She's holding a sign that says rights and wrongs of Abyssinian. So a weak-looking person, obviously perhaps the League, very weak-looking, as a Western and represents Western civilization, suggesting the League and the West are weak. And obviously she's holding up rights and wrongs of Abyssinia. Looks like she's not going to be able to sort of deal with that problem of Abyssinia. Okay, so then we've got the provenance. Okay, it's a British view from David Lowe. Of course, you've probably seen lots of David Lowe cartoons. And so will they look to blame Italy? Will they, rather than themselves, for their lack of action? So we've got the date. This is February 1935. It's after the Wawa incident of December 1934. And Lowe is a well-known cartoonist for criticising the dictators and also the League of Nations for its weakness in dealing with dictators in the 1930s. So we've got quite a lot of things we could potentially use, of course. So how are we going to pull that together for an argument? So remember, we need to create an argument. We need to say how useful we think it is. We need an opening point that's going to say, this is very useful, partly useful about the Abyssinian crisis because. We then need some evidence about the content of the source. We then need to explain with our knowledge, this is useful about the impact of the Abyssinian crisis in the League because, and we might need a furthermore, and you might want to consider doing a provenance in your furthermore. If you don't do the provenance, that's fine. It's just you can't access the top band of marks. So you're going to be sort of up to about 8 marks if you don't talk about the provenance. We're talking provenance for both sources, okay, content for both sources to get the top band of marks. So let's work through this one together. So you can, if you like, use a revision guide, use some paper to write your answer, or you can just listen to me talk through. But obviously, if you're working through it, then pause at each section and you can write your argument. Okay, so let's talk about this one. So source B is very or partly useful about the Abyssinian crisis impact on the League because, okay, so what would you pick out as an argument? What would you say is a reason why it is useful? Okay, is it that that there's a permanent member of the League who's not behaving and it's going to undermine the League even more? Is it the League seems weak and can't stop things? What are you going to say? So here's what I've gone for. So it's very useful about the Abyssinian crisis impact on the League because it shows that many countries, including Britain, had lost faith in the League to solve problems. Okay, right. So we're going to have to interpret that. So we're going to have to develop that Britain and many countries have lost faith in the League. Well, clearly Mussolini has, hasn't he? And the cartoon character suggests weakness of the League. So now pick out a suggestion or a bit of evidence from the content of the source that shows everyone thinks the League is weak. Right, so here's what I've gone for. For example, the source suggests that Italy, a permanent member, will not listen to the League and will attack Abyssinia. Kept it quite simple. You could then add, of course, that the League looked very weak, pathetic sort of figure, very ragged. I don't know, it's supposed to be raggedy clothes. The sign's a bit ragged, isn't it? Doesn't look particularly powerful, very, very small and petite. Okay, but just try and stick to one sentence of evidence there. You're not going to get more than about 4 marks for your point and evidence. There's no point writing about the source continually. You need to get to your knowledge and explain, okay? And the knowledge is where the marks come in. So now we need to spend more time on our knowledge and explain. So this is useful about the impact of the Abyssinian Crisis in the League because, so let's think about our knowledge. What do we know about the weakness of the League? It didn't do any sanctions. It struggled to do sanctions. It failed in Manchuria already. Obviously, this is a permanent member abusing their power. What can we pick out about knowledge to back up the League is not doing anything? Okay, so have a think. What would you add as knowledge? Okay, so here's what I've gone for. This is useful about the impact of the Abyssinian Crisis on the League because it shows that Italy will ignore the League and invade Abyssinia. The League failed to stop Japan in Manchuria, and Mussolini believes it will not stop him attacking Abyssinia after Wawa incident. This is because he believes that France and Britain wish to keep him as a friend against Germany, and their Stresa Pact gives Italy permission to do what he likes. Okay, so I've gone on Stresa Pact knowledge and talked about Manchuria. You could also talk about the weakness of the sanctions, not closing Suez Canal, fear of the strength of Italy, not stopping providing oil. Those are also bits of valid knowledge you could have used here to back up your argument. So what about a furthermore or however? Is there a provenance idea we could give to get us into top band of marks? So we could look at the dates quite early on. So maybe we don't know about the poor quality sanctions yet. So maybe we can't talk about that. It's quite an early event in the actual parts of it. Okay, it's a British cartoon. Is Britain feeling that Italy is to blame, and it's quite useful there. Okay, what could we say? So have a think about what you would add. Right, so here's what I've gone for with the provenance. So gone for, furthermore, the source provenance is useful as this is from February 1935 and reflects the failure League to solve the Wawa crisis and happened 2 months previously. Again, they are slow to solve the problem, and Italy is able to mobilize its army ready to invade Abyssinia. Okay, so I've picked the date out that it's just after the Wawa incident. The League's done very little to solve it and hasn't been proactive. It's very slow like it was in Manchuria. Okay, so then we had a second source we could look at. So using the same process, have a read through the provenance that's up there at the top. It's Anti-Eden, British Foreign Secretary. Have a read of the content that he says. What message can you pick out of that? And then have a go. Is this very useful, partly useful? Give the message. Explain with your knowledge. This time it's from May 1936, so you can use a lot more knowledge about the failed sanctions, the weakness of the League, maybe Germany invading the Rhinelands in the background here by now. So think about how you'd explain this in a bit more detail. Give it a go. Wow, those source skills are tricky. So I hope you've found that useful and you've got a better idea of getting those top level source skills and know that it's mainly your knowledge. You need to just be able to explain an argument again using your knowledge, always coming back to that skill of arguing. So do look out for more videos on the way as I help you through this conflict and tension 1918-1939 topic. All right, bye for now.